Okay, so I'll be bringing this into Substance Painter in a minute, but first I want to decide whether or not I want to bring it in as is, or if I want to create some little separations to decide which parts get which materials in it. Material ID map. And I think things like the cloth I can get away without bothering, but there are some parts in the body which it might be a lot easier to do if I've got my material ID set up first. So I'm going to start off by going to my material attributes, getting rid of that color on there so I can see a bit easier. I'll select everything first. There's display, vertex colors, and I'm going to replace it with just a color to start with. This is not a real color, it is assigned to the vertices. It's not like a material color. But when I bring this into Substance Painter, I can use it to bake these colors into different parts. So I can say, I want all of these little spiky bits and nothing else to have their own color assigned to them. And the same thing for this one over here. Well, first of all, I'll start off by selecting all of it, both of them. UV shell, UV shell, I'll select them all like that. I'm just going to deselect the stuff that I don't want included with this. That way I won't have to find all the little bits and pieces in here. All these little bits and pieces here. Mesh display, apply color, and I'll select a different color, apply color. And there we go. Now everything else on this is already separated into UVs, and I can use that instead of bothering to create a different my material ID. So I'm not going to bother with doing that. But this way I can select all these at once as a material ID rather than trying to select each and every one of those UVs. It's going to be a pain in the neck if I have to do it the other way. Select everything, File, Export Selection. I'm going to name this Mantis for Substance Painter. And this is being exported as an FBX. I'll guarantee that I've got my materials assigned to it and my ID, my vertex colors assigned to it, and I'm going to export my selection. So after thinking about it, I decided, you know what? I think I'm going to bring this into Zbrush, at least part of it. If I bring that into Zbrush, I can sculpt some normals for the ripples in this, that kind of a thing. I think I'll leave the body alone and do all that in Substance Painter. But I am going to bring in a few of these bits to sculpt some fabric details in ZBrush. I'm going to start by selecting these and exporting them as OBJs. Export belt. This is going to be data, and I'll export this as an OBJ. Belt Maya 01. That's the first one I'll export like that, and it's from Maya. Address Maya 01. Address Maya 01. And just so I don't accidentally sculpt in such a way that it goes through the body, I'm going to select a few bits and pieces here. Maybe that as well. Just to give an idea as to where these things are going to be interacting with other objects. So I'll just so I've got those. And now I'm going to bring this into ZBrush. All right, I'm here in ZBrush, and I'm going to start by importing my objects. So I'm going to go import the data. I'm going to start with the objects. I can drag this in, and I hit T to turn this into an object I can interact with. And once again, this is not something I'm sculpting on today. I just want to bring this in so I can see where the other objects are attaching. So I'm going to the Z plugin and find the subtool master, multi-append. I'm going to bring in the belt, the dress, and the headdress all at once. And there they are. These are all located in my subtool menu over here. So if I start off with, say, the belt, right there, and I'll go to my geometry tab right there. I'm going to divide this a few times just to give it some geometry. And let's see. I'll use the clay and throw on an alpha. Reduce the size a bit. Ooh, don't like that, but I thought I put the alpha on there. There we go. You can see I'm sculpting directly onto it. Problem is I'm sculpting to everything else as well. Let's see here. Nope, that's not going to let me do that easily. Create folded up wrinkles. Sculpt them in, smooth them out. Turn this off so I can see what I'm doing. Yeah, I got some wrinkles in there. And let's see here. Take the intensity down a bit, I think. Put a little bit more emphasis into this part right here, if that's where it's being pushed in. Maybe some right here to help sort of define this edge right there, where these are overlapping. There you go. Just get some interesting shapes to it. And you can see it's still going to look like that when I'm done with it, so I'll make sure that this does not poke through it. So I can find my move brush. Let's see, move topological. pull these around a bit to make sure that this is not going through the dress, so I can actually get a hold of some part of it. There we go. Repair that. Sure, still looks about right, even with the sculpting on it, and back down again. Yeah, all right. On to the dress next. And it's pretty obvious this part right here definitely needs to be pulled out. I'm going to turn on the mirror in X. I need to pull this out a little bit. Okay. And now I can maybe sculpt in little folds in here. Probably don't want to have the X turned down. I'm sculpting really close to the middle like this. Otherwise, it starts to look really mirrored. Just want to create some little ripples in it. It's not perfectly smooth and flat. Little chaos makes things a little bit more realistic. Tool I'm using is called the Dam Standard. It cuts in and sharpens, so that's why it gets these nice little sharp valleys right there. But if I hold down Alt, I can reverse it and it'll push out and sharpen. So I can get these little creases in there this way. Cuts in, and then this pushes out, and I smooth it down afterwards with Shift, and this creates subtle ripples in it. Like that. You can just barely see it, so I can try a different material, see if that helps. You just barely see these little unevenness, little wrinkles in the fabric. It adds a little bit of depth and texture to them. I'll do the same thing for this part right here. When I sort of bunch up and fold a lot right around where it's interacting with the arm right there, that makes more sense than if it just flows, smoothly. This is where the wrinkles would be created, interacting with the body. I think I'd add enough. Bring it back down. Make sure it's not getting messed up. Yep, there we go. See that? Because I smoothed it, it kind of shrank a little bit. I'm going to go to my move topological again. I'm going to turn on my X for reflecting across the X-axis. I'm going to pull these out and away from the head so that doesn't go through geometry below it. Gotta be careful about that kind of thing. When you bring stuff into ZBrush, it will change the base shape of your model. I'm going to make sure I save this. Oops, I'm going to go back to my original object just so I don't mess up the names of those. Save as. My data. 1. And I'm going to ooh, that part too. Apparently I missed a bit. X. Missed a bit when I fixed this last time. Redo that real quick. There. And I'll save that again. Short belt. ZBrush show 1. Which one do I have selected? There's my belt. Export belt. ZBrush show 1. Dress. ZBrush 01. And the headdress. ZBrush 01. And I'm going to turn off the body. I don't need that right now. And I'm going to select one of these other objects in there. And I'm going to create a normal map from this. It's going to be back under Z plugin. Multi-map exporter. I'm going to set this to export a normal map. It's going to export a 4K size. Actually, before I do anything, I should probably fix my UVs on them because it did alter the shape. So I have to go back into Maya and fix that. All right, I'm back in Maya. I'm going to delete the belt, the dress, and the headdress and re-import those from ZBrush because by smoothing them, I changed the shape of my data. Find my belt. My dress. And it's still poking out just a little bit right there. I'll fix that in a second. And the headdress. Where else? Not too much. Just enough to no longer conflict with the object below. There. But you. You too, apparently. Just a tiny bit, though. There. Thought I fixed that, but I guess I left it just close enough. Select these. Gonna soften the edges again. You have to be pretty far for that to matter. All right, and I'm gonna reapply my cloth material to those. And let's check them out in the UV editor. Select them and unfold them again. This one probably doesn't require any unfolding, but I'm going to unfold it slightly anyway just to see what happens if I unfold it in the vertical direction. Now I have to reselect everything from my clothes. So I right-click on my layer, select objects. Oops, these are not added to my layer anymore because I just imported them. Add select objects. Now I select my objects. I can see everything there. And I'm going to redo my layout. There, now I'm not touching anymore. I will re-export these and bring them back into ZBrush in order to export my normal map. I have to go back and forth sometimes to get what I want. Oops. Export selection. There we go. Data is the headdress. Now you know why I numbered them. There. And now back into Zbrush again. All right, back in Zbrush. There's my belt. So I'm going to re-import the one I just exported. Belt my 2. Nothing changes here. All that changed was the UV map on them. Select my dress, import, dress my 2, and the headdress, import, headdress my 2. There we go. Now I've got the right UVs on them. So when I go to Z plugin, I'm going to export my normal. It's going to export a 4K map. If I look at the export options, no. Yeah. The normal map, the tangent, all that stuff right there. That's my settings for that. And export all of these all these a map for each one of these will be merged together into one map, so I don't have to worry about combining them again afterwards. And it's only the ones that are visible, which is why I turned off the body over here first. I'm going to create my map and then just wait for that to finish. This will go into my assets, cloth, normals. May have to rename that later. Worked better than I thought it would. All right, that was fast. And I'm back in Maya again because I need to re-export my FBX with my slightly changed geometry and the new UVs. I'm just going to reselect everything. File, export selection. And I want a FBX. I'm going to save over that one. And now I can go to Substance Painter. All right, now we're ready to move on to Substance Painter. So I'm going to start by going to File, New. I'm going to leave this at PBR, Metallic Roughness, Alpha Blend. I like to change my resolution to at least 2K. I can export it at 4K. It's just easier to work with it on my computer at 2K. Leave the normal map format to DirectX, because that is what I export it as in ZBrush. And then select. I'm my praying mantis for substance. There's a lot more stuff in here now. A little hard to find everything. And say OK. And there she is. Like I said before, none of the colors matter. Those ID colors I've set up, you're not going to see those here. You're not going to see the color from the fabric, the cloth material that I put on there. Nothing's going to show up here because those colors don't matter to this, what you actually see. The materials are just there to break this into body and cloth over here in my texture set list. Like that. Body and cloth, body and cloth. And the material IDs won't matter until I bake them out in a minute. I got layers and texture set settings, and the texture set settings is where I can find my mesh maps. And I'm going to click on Bake Mesh Maps. And I got my body and my cloth here. Now on the body, I did not make any normals for it yet, so it's just going to bake nothing. I also have an ID, which I want it to bake. It's going to make that. It's going to make all these things here. If I click on the cloth, it'll do the same thing. Now the problem is, I have a normal for my cloth, but I have to import that in order to use it. So I'm going to return my painting mode, and I want to import my normal map for my cloth. So to do that, I just have to open up my file, and you can't see this, but I'm just going to drag that into my library down at the bottom, and then this pops up. So there's my cloth normals calling it belt, all this other stuff. Don't worry about that. It's actually all of them stuck together. Define, I'm going to change this to texture. I'm going to put in my there so I can identify it later if I need to. Import this into my project I'm working with right now and say import. If I do a search in here for there's my cloth normal right there. So I just take that and drag that into select normal map on the cloth, and now that is already taken care of. So when I go to bake mesh maps on the cloth, I want to turn off normal, otherwise it's going to bake over that with nothing. Now I want to go to my body ID right here. This is set to material color. I don't want to use material color. I want this to use vertex color, because that's what I set up in Maya. I also wanted to double check a couple things. Ambient occlusion. If you're working with like mechanical parts that are rotating all the time, I tend to turn off self-occlusion and tell it to only do the same mesh name. But because this is organic, I'm not worried about that here. I'm just going to leave it as is. Element settings, I'm going to increase my output size. Make sure I get good resolution on this. I might go ahead and do 4K on those. And bake. And those are the normals for the dress. Ambient occlusion. World spaces, I think. Those are the IDs. There we go. And return to painting. And that is getting everything set up for Substance Painter. And I'm not going to have time in this video to get into the actual working in Substance Painter, but I at least want to get everything set up. And you can see these ripples right here. Those are not geometry. That's all in the normal map. Same thing for the dress and the belt. I want to see what those other maps look like before I move on. They are mesh maps. Those are the normals. These are the ones we baked out of Zbrush. World space, these are using the ones we baked out of Zbrush to create this, but this is creating sort of a direction of where each face is pointing. See, if you look at this direction, it's all green. Here it's pretty much all red tinted. Every direction has its own color. See, there's the ID. The cloth had no ID, but the body did. So you can see that these are set up like that. All the yellow bits in here, those are the claw spiky things. Ambient occlusion. The closer two objects are together, the darker they are. So you get these little dark lines in between things. Sort of fake shadows. Curvature. When things curve outwards, they curve one direction, they get light, and they curve the other direction, they get dark. And when they're not curving, they're gray. So it shows you where the edges of all your objects are, all the little creases and the edges. Position in the X, Y, and Z space. Higher it is, the greener it is. Closer to the front, the bluer it gets. And thickness is how thick the different parts are. So these are really, really thin right here. They're black. Kind of useful. I want to make this look so slightly translucent. I could make the thicker parts look slightly darker than the thinner parts by using this as a map to control that. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. Just want to get through setup for Substance Painter.